If you want to get somewhere in a real hurry in GTA Online, you grab yourself a fast car. But if you want to go even faster while also being fully protected from griefers, you need an aircraft. These days, pretty much everyone in the lobby has at least one flying vehicle, and if you open up your map, you'll see the usual household pests like the Oppressor Mark II and Deluxo, crawling around like cockroaches in the skies, just waiting for someone to drive by so they can unload their homing missiles and ruin your day. However, things look very different when you're sitting inside the cockpit of a fighter jet, because now you're the hunter and they're the hunted. Which is why in today's video, I will give you guys my top 15 picks for the best aircraft in GTA Online that you must buy to improve your gameplay experience. Some of these are full-on fighter jets, others are attack helicopters, and we even have some sleeper picks in here that I bet you've never even considered before. So starting off with number 1, the best aircraft in the entire game is the Savage. It needs no introduction. Just kidding though. To actually kick things off at number 1, we've got the Western Rogue at just $1.6 million. This is the aircraft that I recommend to most beginners in GTA Online. If you've never sat in the cockpit of a fighter jet before, don't go straight for a Hydra or a laser, because you won't have the necessary skills to utilize those jets to their fullest potential. Instead, grab yourself a Rogue and learn the fundamentals first. It has a little bit of everything: machine guns, which can be upgraded to explosive autocannons, homing missiles, which can also be fired without lock-on, and a bomb bay, which can be equipped with everything from explosive to incendiary bombs. However, there is an aircraft that's even cheaper than the Rogue, and it's an absolute giant killer because you can take down some pretty big game with this figurative mosquito. I'm of course talking about the Sea Breeze, which is an aircraft that can be yours right now for just $1.1 million, or you can get it at a discounted price of $850,000 if you've completed 36 air freight cargo missions in your hangar. So what makes this little guy so special? Well, for starters, it's amphibious, which means you can take off and land on water, but hazard, I hear you say. There are other amphibious planes in the game, like the Dodo, and they all suck. Well, that's true. But the Sea Breeze is an exception here to the rule, because even though it might look like something used by tourism agencies, it packs one hell of a punch with those twin front-mounted machine guns. These machine guns aren't the most powerful in terms of damage per shot, as they top out at 200 compared to 250 for similar machine guns on other weaponized airplanes. However, the Sea Breeze's ace up its sleeve is its insane maneuverability at low speeds. If you're going low and slow, which is typical when you're fighting inside the city, it'll completely outturn aircraft like the Laser and Molotov, and you'll always be able to position yourself on their 6 within the first 1 or 2 turns. And if someone tries to get cheeky by showing up with an insurgent pickup or APC, you can blow them all the way to hell with your barrage of explosive bombs. Next is the Avenger, and this one's a bit of a flying fortress. It isn't so much an aircraft as it is a bunker with autocannon turrets, and if you have a crew, the Avenger might just be the single most annoying thing in the skies for anybody who finds themselves on the wrong side of your guns. Here are some quick figures: 23 homing missiles, 8 RPGs, 19 explosive sniper rounds, and 4 tank rounds. That's how much damage an Avenger can soak up before its armor shatters, but most enemies won't last long enough to do that because you'll have vaporized them into red mist with your explosive autocannons, 50 cal machine guns, homing missiles, and bombs. Then it also has a cargo bay, which you can use to drop a weaponized vehicle on your enemies. And because that wasn't cool enough, Rockstar also decided to give the Avenger a missile lock-on jammer, and stealth mode, and VTOL. Needless to say, the Avenger is everything you could possibly want in an aircraft. Yes, it handles like a brick, and it isn't all that fast, but none of that really matters when you can swat oppressors and hunters out of the skies in 2 seconds like they're flies, while face tanking everything that the lobby throws at you. For number 4, I've got a bit of a sleeper pick with the Cuban 800, which is the aircraft that you get for free whenever you purchase a hangar. However, what most people don't realize is that the Cuban 800 might be one of the best ground attack planes in the entire game. First off, it doesn't stand out on the radar as a weaponized aircraft, so most people think you're just another guy flying around in a cargo hauler and they get baited into attacking you. However, by the time they realize that they've gotten themselves into it, it's usually too late, because you'll have unleashed a hailstorm of bombs and flown away, leaving only a smoldering wreck behind you. The Cuban doesn't handle very well at all, it's quite underpowered for how heavy it is, and it's basically a Cessna with some weapons bolted onto the frame, but none of that really matters because it's the most unlikely assassin in the entire lobby, and I guarantee you nobody is going to see you coming. Tanks, cars, bikes, players on foot, it doesn't really matter what you're going up against, because the Cuban can take more punishment than standard fighter jets with its upgraded armor, and it can easily take off and land from really short runways, so you can get in and out of the action really fast. Of course, if you feel like that's a stupid pick, feel free to sub it in with the Savage like I talked about at the beginning of the video, because the Savage helicopter is just so relentlessly aggressive. The Sparrow also makes it onto my list, even though it's built like a wet paper bag, and that's because of two things. First, the Sparrow is fast, really fast for a helicopter. In fact, with a top speed of over 168 miles an hour, it's the fastest helicopter in the game. Secondly, the Sparrow is tiny, and it can be called right next to you like a personal vehicle from your Kosatka service menu. This means that whenever you find yourself in a pickle and you need an aircraft fast, you can have a Sparrow delivered within 10 meters of your character just like that. It takes 5 seconds to spawn in, and when it's destroyed, you can call a new one in 2 minutes. No need to get your vehicle claimed from Mors Mutual, just call in a brand new one from the Kosatka, because apparently there's a 5D breeder reactor in there somewhere that just pumps out Sparrows one after the other. The Sparrow has an infinite supply of homing missiles, excellent countermeasures, and it's quite nimble, so you'll be able to turn around and face those incoming threats to get that missile lock going. Homing missiles can be fired one after the other with no cooldown, and the maneuverability makes it really easy to fly in between tight spaces like the buildings in Los Santos, where most fighter jets will simply clip their wings and explode in a ball of flames because they're going too fast. Plus, it's one of the top 3 grinding vehicles in GTA Online alongside the Oppressor Mark II and Raiju, so grab one of these for your Kosatka if you haven't already. I guarantee you that it'll completely change how you play PvE content in the game. Number 6 is the Akula, which is an entirely different breed of helicopter from the Sparrow, and this one's a stealthy assassin with heavy armor, and it's an absolute beast in PvP, especially if you're solo, because you can still access most of the Akula's arsenal without a co-pilot. You'll still need a partner to operate the chin-mounted turret, but even without it, you can pack some excellent firepower with a pair of front-firing machine guns, an ample supply of homing missiles which can be toggled into unguided barrage mode, as well as an assortment of various types of bombs for ground targets. And since this is an attack helo, you still get tremendous amounts of armor, allowing you to tank up to 3 RPGs or 3 homing missiles. Pretty much every jet in the game will go down to just 1 RPG or 2 homing missiles, so that extra bit of resistance does come in handy when you're flying low and slow. And speaking of low and slow, we can't forget about the big daddy of them all, the B-11 Strike Force, aka the A-10 Warthog, which is the ultimate tank killer in all of GTA Online. Some say it even comes with a 30% damage buff against British players in the lobby, but I've yet to confirm that. Jokes aside though, the Strike Force feels like one of those old warhorses that should be totally outdated by now, but for some reason it just refuses to die and manages to stay relevant in the era of stealth VTOL fighters and jets with super high top speeds. Is it the best dogfighter? Hell no. This thing turns like a titanium bathtub, and its nose-mounted Gatling gun fires at a slower rate than the guns on the Laser and Hydra, even though it's supposed to be based on a GAU-8 Avenger, possibly the most devastating aircraft gun in existence. However, it does have access to homing missiles that fire continuously without pause, as well as rocket barrages for close-range dogfights. Then there are also bombs, which turn ground vehicles into scrap metal within seconds. Just try not to get into extended fights with actual air superiority fighters, or you'll quickly be acquainted with your lack of speed and below average turn rate. Then we've got the big 3, the creme de la creme of air superiority in GTA Online. The first one is the Pyro, acknowledged by many as the best pure dogfighter in the game with its exceptional turn rate, superb climbing speed, and predictable handling. The Pyro's top speed of 222 miles an hour also makes it the second fastest jet in the game, and despite lacking the explosive cannons of the Hydra or Laser, its acceleration and tight turning radius ensure that it'll always have the advantage in a close range fight. The Starling is very similar to the Pyro, although it heavily relies on its rocket booster for mobility and acceleration, and it feels a bit more twitchy than the Pyro in my opinion. It really likes to roll and turns even tighter than the Pyro, plus it has bombs for ground targets, unlike the Pyro, which is strictly an air-to-air fighter jet. However, the Starling is also much slower, so if a Pyro wants to disengage from the fight and you don't have your rocket boost, there's honestly very little you can do to chase it down. Finally, at number 10, we've got the Raiju, which transcends everything else with its combination of speed, firepower, and mobility. It has vertical takeoff and landing, it has radar stealth, it has the highest top speed in the game, it accelerates super well, and while its normal turn rate isn't as high as the Pyro or Starling, once you learn to take advantage of the vertical thrusters, you can pull off some pretty insane maneuvers that will make Maverick from Top Gun blush with envy. This aircraft can dodge missiles, it can run away from other jets, and it can ambush you from a mile away if you aren't paying attention. It's also an excellent grinding vehicle for missions, and it has more armor than most other fighter jets, making it better at sustained firefights where there's a lack of back and forth between multiple enemies. In other words, it just does everything, and that makes it the ultimate aircraft to use in GTA Online. But I'm not done yet, because we've only reviewed 10 so far, and so it's time for the bonus round. First, we've got the Nagasaki Ultralight, which is a glider with a fan bolted to the rear and a gun in the front. It might seem like a bit of a joke, a gimmick even, but this $660,000 aircraft is hiding a big secret, and that's the unintentionally broken stealth mechanic. If you equip the carbon props and you idle the engine or stop accelerating, the ultralight will automatically disappear from the map, even while you're shooting the front-mounted machine gun. So you can paint this thing black, take it out at night, and absolutely shred people from stealth, most of whom won't even realize what's going on until it's too late. It's the ultimate troll aircraft in GTA Online. Then we've got the Titan 250D, which, despite the engine and weapon nerfs, is still a pretty big force to be reckoned with, but only if you have a crew. Don't bother getting into this thing if you're solo, otherwise you'll just stand out as a giant target to every Raiju and Oppressor player in the lobby. The FH-1 Hunter is also worth mentioning today, and this is a duo special because with a co-pilot, you could take advantage of that brutal chin-mounted autocannon which absolutely wrecks ground vehicles. It's also heavily armored and it can tank up to 3 RPGs, which makes it a nightmare to fight against if you're on the ground. Then for all you old school fighter fans out there, we've got the Hydra, which for the longest time was one of the 2 best weaponized planes in the entire game, alongside the laser, thanks to that death ray of an autocannon mounted up front. These days though, its lack of speed and underwhelming VTOL performance make it a tier 2 pick compared to the Raiju, but if you have a Hydra, fret not, because it's still an absolute beast in the right hands. And lastly, we've got the Vietnam Special, aka the Molotov, which is a mix of a MiG-15 and a MiG-17. And if you really want to cosplay as the bad guy, put a Red Star livery on this jet and get into dogfights with lasers and Hydras. 9 times out of 10, you'll outturn and outshoot them. However, it absolutely sucks against ground targets because it has no explosive cannon, and the $4.8 million price tag is a bit too steep in my opinion for what this jet offers. And there you have it, guys. Those are my top 15 must-buy aircraft in GTA Online for every possible situation you might find yourself in. Realistically, probably a top 10 list, but I threw in 5 extra bonus picks for some fun here. I made sure to keep this list fully focused only on aircraft and not air vehicles as a whole, because in the case of me doing that, I would also include vehicles like the Oppressor Mark II and Deluxo, because those would have been eligible. However, if you want to see a separate video on just air vehicles in general, then let me know and maybe we could do that one in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Make sure to drop a like on it if you found it informative and you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new and you want to see more GTA 5 online videos like this. Check me out over on Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram, specifically twitch.tv/hazardoushdtv. And I will see you guys in the next GTA 5 online video. Adios, amigos.